Catherine Viat is here with the papers as well now. We're going to have a look at what's grabbing the headlines right around the world. In the US, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, he's kind of flailing around a bit here as he tries to clarify his immigration policy, isn't he?
Yeah, in recent days, we've seen him try to soften his stance a bit on immigration. And in fact, on Wednesday, he's supposed to unveil a big speech where he's going to clarify where he stands on this contentious issue. But this new tone hasn't gone over all that well. This from the Dallas Morning News, the paper's political columnist is writing there that Trump's new tone on immigration unleashes anger and skepticism. And its reporter Todd Gilman goes on to say that it was tough talk on immigration that got Donald Trump through the primaries, and his shifting views and rhetoric have left bewilderment this past week. Goes on to say that supporters aren't sure whether to be flustered that Trump is easing down the wrong path or pleased that a hardliner with a shot at the White House has found a way to broaden his appeal.
Yeah, of course, Trump, he's bounced back before, isn't he? But one publication is already making the case that he may really be out of time already to turn his campaign around.
This comes from Politico, the political website, and it says that with 70 days to go before the elections, Trump's new team is dreaming if they think they have time here. It says that with negative perceptions hardened, that his late adjustments on policy and rhetoric could sway too few people to matter, and that in fact more than 60% of Americans have an unfavorable opinion of Donald Trump, and that a recent poll by Quinnipiac University found that 90% of likely voters have already made up their mind and that it's unlikely to change. So it's a bit of an uphill battle there for Donald Trump.
More big stories in the papers around the world. Actually going to go to the sports pages, aren't we?
That's right. We're talking here about San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Now, he's in the headlines here for choosing to sit down when the national anthem is played at the sporting events. And this is generating tons of controversy. We can take a look at the New York Daily News. That's a tabloid paper. They've put it on the front page of their paper. It says their flag, that's a reference to a penalty or a flag on a play in football. And inside the paper goes on to explain Kaepernick's position on this, his reason for choosing to sit down and protest at the national anthem. He says that I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color. A reference here to the Black Lives Matter movement, of which Kaepernick is a strong supporter. And he says, he's going to continue to sit out the anthem until he feels there's been some significant change made.
Yeah, and perhaps not surprisingly, his position really creating a whole load of controversy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S., not standing for the national anthem can be deeply offensive to some people. Some people see it as very disrespectful. So, in fact, some 49ers fans have been out burning his jersey in protest over this. San Francisco Chronicle, in their sports pages, that's the 49ers' hometown paper, says that Kaepernick's protest is the wrong time and place. Their sports writer goes on to say that it's a noble thought, but it's not the right place for it, and says that sitting out the national anthem, while it will generate plenty of attention, it's unclear who, if anyone, will benefit from this form of protest.
He's got his supporters as well, though, hasn't he?
Right. If we take a look at the USA Today sports pages, their sports writer says it's kudos to Kaepernick for taking a stand against social injustice. Says that now is not the time to throw him under a bus as some sort of demon for taking a stand against social injustice, applauds the athlete for speaking his conscience and using his platform as an athlete to do so, and says that somewhere Muhammad Ali is smiling, a reference to the famous boxer who was known for his famous outspoken social positions.
Finally, in the papers, we're going to go to Africa. A bit of a showdown there as global powers are competing really to expand their sphere of influence.
Right, this is sort of interesting. So over the weekend, Japan signed a huge deal to invest in Africa, $30 billion to invest in infrastructure and boost growth on the continent. And this comes now as China is continuing to up its investment in the continent. And if we take a look at the Japan Times, says that the headline there says that Abe dangles a $30 billion at African leaders in Nairobi to counter China. And paper says that the pledge this amount of money and this pledge is proof that Japan is serious about competing for influence in the continent with China, the U.S., and former European colonial powers such as Britain and France. Now, the Global Times, which is the Chinese and English language Chinese paper geared at foreigners outside of China, is viewing this investment, Japan's investment, as competition. It goes on to report that the China-Japan rivalry is spilling over into Africa here. And it says that while China's construction firms have had an edge in infrastructure projects so far, that could change now as Japan pumps in more money.
Okay, that's our look at the international papers with Catherine Viat here on France 24.